Hello, and welcome to Castle Talk, where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castlebridge Media, author of this winter's 18 Miles from Town, a midlife crisis thriller. Tonight, we're chatting with Martin Wilson, director of Great White, which is newly arrived here on Shudder. In Great White, a blissful tourist trip turns into a nightmare when 5 seaplane passengers are stranded miles from shore. In a desperate bid for survival, the group try to make it to land before they either run out of supplies or are taken by a menacing terror, which I should mention is a great white lurking just beneath the surface. It was written by Michael Boughen, stars Katrina Bowden, Aaron Jakubenko, Tatjana Marjanovic, and Kimie Tsukakoshi. Welcome, Martin.
Oh, thank you very much. What a great introduction, Jason. Love it.
Thank you very much. All right, so I know as a director, I think this is this your debut feature?
This is my first feature film, yes.
So I'm really curious. It must be very daunting as a director to go, I'm going to do an adventure. It's about people versus the elements versus a great white shark. Everybody thinks about, the pop culture was set by a great white for the last 50 years. How do you approach that and not go, wow, how do I not sort of stumble against all of these great films that have gone before?
Well, you know that the bar is very, very high with Jaws, and of course you don't try and emulate Jaws. You're doing in our mind we were doing a survival thriller, and then sharks, great whites happened to be in it. So we were, of course, very respectful to Jaws and the other similar types of films in the genre, but we were looking at the film from a different type of perspective in that in order to sort of stand out in that pantheon of films was to focus on the environment as a key character, because we had 5 main characters, but how do we add a 6? And for me it was the landscape, the environment of Northern Australia, like it hasn't really been seen in this type of film before. And so we're looking at the beautiful, beguiling northern tropical waters and coastline of Australia. It's like, it's just so beautiful. You just want to go there, and then you want to take a dip in the water because it looks like, wow, this is sort of a great swim. But the whole juxtaposition is that there's something lurking below. There's something primal and dark and dangerous. We're really looking into all of those elements and how that we can work the suspense. We can work the horrors in the mind of the audience. And then we were looking at, okay, suddenly how do we just seep in the environmental themes of what mankind has done to the ocean, as a theme, we didn't want the sharks to be these, villains, these monsters, and just chewing up people for no reason. There has to be an elevated reason for that for us. So we were thinking, wow, you know what? We have a scene where Joji throws his water bottle casually into the water. And that is a metaphor of what mankind has done to the ocean. And sound-wise too, mate, I focused on a lot of, mucking around with whale sounds.
Yes.
They're very sad and very ethereal. And that is the sound of that is the ocean. That is the pain of the ocean. And the sharks are like the avenging angels of the ocean, so all those elements we were working with Great White. And of course the nuanced characters, we're trying to give them, something really 3D and believable about their fears and their hopes and their dreams and how they interact,
I was thinking, that goes back a long way. You think of like Lifeboat, right, by Hitchcock. You don't need much to keep people interested. You just need characters who can interact with one another. In that case, in a lifeboat, and no, not to give a spoiler, but a lot of this film is spent with the characters trying to rely on one another and survive in a very small craft, in the middle of, So in fact, I was thinking about the fact that, your 2 main characters are this, this pair that do these, tourist tours. And one of the strangest thing, of course, is they know the elements, they know the dangers, they know what's risky and what's not risky, but it's the tourists who have the money. And so there's always this this conflict where, if those tourists didn't exist, I wouldn't have money to keep doing this. But on the other hand, they don't
Yeah.
understand what they're doing, and that
No.
allows you to bring out a lot of that conflict.
Yeah, that's right. And so even you want to like the shark and the villain, the perceived villain in this, he's acting out of his own fears.
Hmm.
It's all coming from a true place inside, and that we did a lot of work with the characters and putting bios and back histories together to really to make that appear more real and make people care more, obviously. And then there's a whole interesting thing about Australia is we have a very rich pearl industry.
Hmm.
In the early 19th century, the Northern Australia, the pearl divers were all Japanese, and so that works back into our character of Michelle and wanting to go to Hell's Reef to spread your grandfather's ashes, and he was a
Yes.
pearl diver, and we worked the climax of the film all around that and the wreck and everything. It's all based on true history in Australia, which again hasn't been, explored in any sort of shark film before.
I love that. Yeah, no, that sets it apart, and also means that that thing I just said about the tourism and tourists, they could just be caricatures, but they're not. They're real people. They have things that they want to accomplish, and I like the fact that everybody seemed to have their own motivations that made sense.
Yeah.
So, question: uh, how, how did you do the sharks? I mean, what are they? And you don't have to say, but are they CG? I mean, what am I looking at?
Well, it's like all these films, mate, and you have a combination of so many things to try and get this puzzle piece to sort of work, with your budget, the fact that I had 25 days to do this thing. We carefully utilized some stock footage of sharks. We had some CG elements, and we had an animatronic shark called Brenda. I know they had Bruce. They had Bruce in Jaws.
Famously didn't function all that well. The Bruce back in the day.
We've all seen the docos. I've watched it a million times. When the shark's not working. We've all seen that. I'm sure your listeners will know what I'm talking about. But Bruce was named after Spielberg's lawyer. Ours is Brenda, which is just a friend of Bruce's, not named after anyone's lawyer, but it was a bit of fun.
You have this whole ending section, which is built around all of this wreckage, so that you have and in any film, the final sort of third of it moves into a new environment, and you have all of this rather complicated action, and so it's very effective with them dealing with they're suddenly in a metal environment, and I'd love to hear about putting that together.
Well, the interesting thing about this is that what I wanted to do was bring the humans into the sharks' environment and test them to their absolute maximum against the sharks, rather than putting the sharks into a human, coming above water, so to speak. So we shot that in this actually an aviation tank. Where they teach people how to get out of aircrafts and stuff that has gone into the water. We've all seen that scene in Officer and a Gentleman with David Caruso. So imagine I was in that tank, and we built these metal shards and this whole huge metal construction in there, and we had good old Brenda chomping away down there in this tank. And of course, the fascinating thing, or the hard thing about it, is in those environments, because it was hard shooting out in the elements in the open ocean in 25 days, where you've got the wind and the tides and the brutal Australian sun and all the jellyfish in the water. Then you think, wow, I'm going to be safe. I'm going into a tank, tank environment where it's more controllable. Then you have the elements of breathing, holding your breath, going underwater. We've got divers around the actors. You've got claustrophobic environments. Communication is very difficult. So it's just a fascinating blend of all these things that you try and get right to make a movie.
It seems like such a daring thing to decide for you. And I know that you've been filming a long time, but I mean, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not a filmmaker, but I've always heard it's one of those things you hear on documentaries that filming on the water is just 10 times more complicated than filming on a soundstage.
It is.
And so did you just sort of take a gulp and then go, well, I guess we're going to figure this out tactically, or what was that challenge like?
Yeah, pretty much. Just hold my breath and dive off the deepest end in the on the diving board. But doing that with a lot of planning and pre-production. I mean, I think movies are made in pre, and so you do as much as you can, but still you're scared out of your mind. How you're going to achieve this. You absolutely are. You just don't know, and you can storyboard it to the nth degree, but there's so many things that can go wrong. So yeah, absolutely.
When they're on that
yeah.
raft, how are you filming? And forgive me for the technical questions, but are you on a pier that's right next to the raft? Or are you on another raft? I mean, how does that work?
No. Well, that's the thing with shooting on water, because you're obviously trying to have the illusion that you're in the middle of nowhere. But with water, often in order to get the shooting time done, we are actually in waist deep water. Shooting handheld above the raft. So the cameraman, the DOP, and everyone are actually standing in the water. I'm standing, and we can move around the raft and we can pivot and do all this stuff. Soon as we moved and things got crazy, when you have to go deeper, then you're on platforms. Then you're on shooting off boats. You can lose 50% of your time just in the infrastructure of that.
Did you take pictures of? I mean, I assume for your own uses, you've got like photos of your crew and everybody working around all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see that stuff.
Yeah, there is some crazy shots of all the things we've just spoken about, and you go, "What? This is like in The Wizard of Oz when they pulled the curtain back, and there's nothing crazy about this. This is just filmmaking 101,
Yeah. I love it.
And the illusion is gone. It's gone, man.
Oh, okay. Well, fair enough. All right.
Funny.
Still, that's really cool, and I'm glad that you would share that. I'm curious about what you had to put your act. What kind of prep did you give your actors before, Katrina Bowden and Aaron and so forth? I mean, what you said? Okay, hey, we're going to film this thing in 6 months or 3 months. Get in shape, or like what what did you ask them to do?
Well, they obviously they were incredible, and they really embraced the genre and what they had to do. I never heard one complaint from the actors, any of them. I mean, Katrina was amazing. She's got to come to a new, different country, go into waters that are, are foreign to her, and God knows what's in them, and just embrace that, and actually just be so brave to do all of this. So, like that, we did some water training beforehand. The actors are naturally very fit and ready to go. We did as much as we could, but we were very limited with our time. So, yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, it's 25 days filming, so that pre-work, I imagine you don't have much time for, doing the training you were talking about, I assume, for this is how you're going to interact with the camera underwater if you've never done that. This is how, because there are skills there that these guys need to learn.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's just full on. It's just, and with Aaron Jakubenko plays Charlie, he had a lot of training he'd done previously for another project where he really understood how to because holding your breath is an insane skill to have.
I can imagine.
That's not something you can get overnight. Not something you can get overnight. And so, and thing is, in Australia, everyone swims. Like, it's almost expected. It'd be, you get a double take if someone says, "Oh, I can't swim." They'd be like, "What?" So you never know what someone coming from, and because the other 4 cast members were all Australian or from New Zealand, we wouldn't know that. Katrina wouldn't have. I wouldn't know that not coming from the States. So. But she certainly can swim and stuff. You just don't know.
That must be one of the strangest things about being a director and I'm sure there are things that surprise you, but it's dealing with I mean, that didn't happen, right? You didn't have an actor show up and it turns out they don't know how to swim. But I'm sure every day.
No, we actually didn't. Oh, it does. No. It does. Like you might. I remember a commercial once where the guy had to drive, and he got the part, and then we turn up on the set and he goes, "I don't have a license." So suddenly you got to find a trailer and put. Do you know what I mean? It does happen. It does happen. Of course, you don't want those surprises on a feature film.
No. no. I
Hi,
mean,
Jason. Sorry to interrupt. Just want to give you about a 2-minute heads up before we need to wrap.
all right, that sounds good. Well, Martin Wilson, the film is called Great White. It just showed up on Shudder. It is a tense film. It's a survival horror, so it's a survival horror with sharks, and it's beautiful. I really enjoyed watching it, and I'm so glad that you would take the time to talk about it with me.
Oh, thank you, Jason. It's been an honor to talk to you, and also Talent Cinemas as well. So get to the movies, get out of the house,
Absolutely.
enjoy the fresh air, and see it on the big screen, because that's what it was made for.
Excellent tip. Thank you very, very much. And I totally agree. I'm back at the movies, and it's like going home.
Yes.
So I agree with that completely.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
Yes, sir. Have a great evening.
Great to talk to you, man. I hope to speak to you again, mate.
I hope
Next
so. Give me a
time,
call the
whenever.
next time. Absolutely. Anytime.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Awesome. Thanks, mate.